And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Welcome to another edition of the Tim Donnelly Show, heard on the Radio Free California Network, streaming live at timdonnellyshow.com. We got a great show planned for you today on Wednesday, April 22nd, Earth Day. Now, what does that mean? Well, I just did a little bit of thinking on this. And I came up with Earth Day is a national day of hypocrisy celebrated by the left. Now think about it. They don't want you to be able to have plastic bags because they don't actually want to hold anyone accountable for litter. So they want to make that choice for you. They don't want you to have a large carbon footprint, but they have no problem having a massive government boot on your neck, a massive government footprint that chokes off your opportunity. And while they're jetting around telling you what to do, going from global warming or global climate change or whatever the latest name for it is this week, in their private jets, which I don't have a problem with private jets. But if you're going to go around and tell everybody else what to do, and you could ride on an airplane with 175 people, admittedly, it's not as much fun as a private jet. Or you could take a massive jet and fly with 2 or 3 people. Well, which one has the larger global carbon footprint? Well, I think every one of us can answer that question. But as it goes on and on and on, it's nothing but rules for you and none for us. That's what I hear from the left. That's what Earth Day means to me, because the vast majority of Americans, we love the environment. We take care of it. We protect it. And we don't need Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or Michael Moore or my favorite, Al Gore. I wish I could do an Al Gore voice. I can do his buddy, Bill Clinton. Hey, Al, you could pick me up in the private jet and maybe we could go out and cruise, meet some chicks or something. I don't know. But, hey, it's Earth Day, some hippies out there that are just waiting to meet us. I mean, Al Gore. This is a guy that has a 10,000 square foot mansion paid for by big tobacco money. Of course, he pretends to be anti-smoking and everything, but he leaves the lights on all the time. People have gone by and taken pictures of this. And yet he wants to tell you that your use of energy is a threat. And he made that movie An Inconvenient Lie, or an inconvenient, he calls it inconvenient truth. I call it an inconvenient lie. But the bottom line is, do we need anybody telling us what to do when they're doing the opposite? I was looking at, there's a trade deal that's being fast-tracked through Congress, and that deal has support by both Republicans and Democrats. And it was Dick Morris that pointed out, talk about hypocrisy on Earth Day. This deal, which is called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I heard an advertisement the other day by a union, and the unions are against this because they think it's going to hurt the little guy. They think it's going to hurt their membership. And look, I am at odds almost all the time with public sector government unions, but this particular trade deal has a stipulation in it that will allow unrestricted immigration, and it's you can't make this stuff up. The president of the United States thinks he can slip this into a trade deal and completely override the authority of the Congress. And the authority of the Congress is important because our congressmen and women are closer to the people. They're actually supposed to listen to us. Well, we do have a clip coming up of one congressman who wasn't very happy at being approached in public by the public and reacted badly. But this is really disturbing when it's being fast-tracked and both parties support it. And I would say they're not ignorant of what's in it. And I think Dick Morris would agree. They know what's in it. They want to get it through and then say, oh, well, we didn't know what was in it until after it's already done. And that right there is that's why so many people have given up and don't believe in their political leaders anymore because they play too many games and they spend too much time hanging out with each other rather than with the people they represent. And hypocrisy is normal in that world and in that life. Hey, we have got some great guests coming up today. We're going to have Victor Davis Hanson, who is one of the foremost authorities on the drought, on hypocrisy, on the leftist environmentalist agenda, and the hypocrisy of having open borders and unrestricted illegal immigration and the real implications. And he is quite an impressive individual. You'll want to check out his bio and some of his articles. You can find him. He writes on National Review Online. He's got a website, victorhanson.com, and he'll be up on our website, timdonnellyshow.com. But whatever you do not miss our 5 o'clock hour today because it is going to be action-packed, and we are going to have some really, truly impressive individuals. Also, in the 4 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking about massive, unmitigated abuse of power in Wisconsin. You know, it's interesting as the 2016 field starts to shape up, and it's great. I'll talk about it in the next segment because I want to delve into it. There's a new entrant into the race. If you didn't get the news, she hasn't announced yet, but yes, I just gave it away. It is a woman, and she is not Hillary Clinton. But we are going to have a representative from the state of Wisconsin to discuss some of the most alarming. I don't have adequate words for it. Maybe I'll come up with them by the time we do the segment. But the abuses are so over the top. It's like I'm reading a Kafka novel. It's the Kafkaesque police state. And you won't believe it until you hear it and until you read it. And we will be going over that later on today. But look, this show doesn't take place without you. So if you have an opinion on any of these topics, 323-746-TALK is our call-in line, 323-746-8255. For those of you who are driving or unable to look down at your phone. Happy Earth Day. Opening hour, Tim Donnelly Show. TimDonnellyShow.com. We'll have more after the break. Stay tuned. '16 is certainly shaping up to be an interesting year. The race just got more interesting as, of course, everyone, whenever they mention Hillary Clinton, and we're not going to be one of these shows who just bags on one party, but Hillary has been presenting herself as the candidate that should be coronated because she's a woman. And any time everyone says, wouldn't it be nice to have a woman president? And I read a comment on Facebook the other day, and it was kind of funny because there's a big move by the left to redefine gender. And when I was in the California State Assembly, we had bill after bill after bill to ultimately define your gender as how you feel, your gender expression, whether you feel like you're a man or a woman or you're confused over it. But at any rate, it is remarkable that they have made such a big deal over the fact that there is a woman running. I guess that's what the left considers to be diversity. And I have to laugh every time I look at the 2016 field, because on the one side, you have multiple individuals you have more than one that are Hispanic, one black doctor who is running. You have, let's see, it's possible that Bobby Jindal will run, who is Indian, and a number of other candidates who represent a tremendous amount of diversity in terms of where they come from, the color of their skin, their ideas, their platforms. They're young and old alike, different walks of life. Some are self-made and some are very, very successful. And into that diversity, the pool of diversity on the Republican side of the ticket just became more diverse with the entrance of a woman. So Carly Fiorina is talking about announcing on May 4th. And they one of the reporters said, well, that would be the first time that I covered an announcement by a candidate for president wearing nail polish. And she just kind of laughed and said, yeah, she's actually got a terrific story. I met her when she was running for Senate, and this is a woman who was going through trying to recover from cancer, and she just braved through it out on the campaign trail, and it was so impressive, her work ethic and her ideas and her personality. Unfortunately, her campaign consultants tried to turn her into some kind of establishment zombie, and none of that came through really on television. But in person, she's a dynamic individual. Hey, I say more power to you. I love having so many wonderful, articulate, intelligent people in the race on both sides. I mean, I've said before on this show, I'd love to see Elizabeth Warren and Governor O'Malley sort of get a little bit more attention. And maybe, who knows, maybe the the Democrat Party will actually push somebody other than Hillary, because if they don't, they're going to be in some serious trouble. Hillary's campaign is coming up against something that I have never seen happen in politics. You actually have the mainstream media has reached out to get an early copy of a book about her cash. I think it's called Clinton Cash, written by Peter Schweitzer, who is admittedly a right-wing guy. Okay, so he clearly has an agenda, but it doesn't matter what his agenda is if the facts are correct. And for some reason, the media, the mainstream media, which is largely, I believe when Bill Clinton was president, they did a poll of reporters, and 89% of them admitted that they had voted for Bill Clinton, which is remarkable. So there clearly is a left-wing bias. Anybody with a brain knows that among the establishment media. But what's rather interesting and new is that the mainstream media is going to use a book as opposition research, essentially, on a candidate they should be supporting, a candidate that they should like. And anybody who's run for office higher than state, like a state assembly or senate, if you've run for a statewide office, which I have, and who knows, maybe some of my listeners have, there is a tremendous amount of energy exerted to destroy your character. And it doesn't really matter who you are. You don't have to have done anything. They will take the most innocuous sounding thing and they will turn it into something. And so but that all has always been a one-way street. It's always been against conservatives. It's always been against what I would call a man of the people or a woman of the people who rises up, who threatens the establishment, because the establishment, the political establishment, is a power establishment. It is there to defend the status quo, to defend those who are in power. And they don't really care about the ideology of the individual. They care whether the individual has the courage to expose and threaten the ruling regime. And that right there is the key. And I'm going to admit to being a little bit perplexed and very, very curious why they're attacking Hillary, who appears to be the best chance they have to regain the White House. Hey, we've got a great show coming up. Tim Donnelly Show. Stay tuned through the break. You're listening to the Tim Donnelly Show on the Radio Free California Network. And we've got a fantastic lineup today, especially in the 5 o'clock hour. I know I'm not supposed to tell you what hour we're going to have a guest in. Bethany's giving me a dirty look in there. But look, we have one of the most intelligent, most articulate experts on almost everything California. And that's Victor Davis Hanson, who, among other things, wrote a book called Mexifornia. He has written another book on illegal immigration and solutions, and he is a military scholar, military historian, traveling scholar on a number of different subjects. And the guy is a prolific writer, and when you read what he writes, Every single time I read one of his articles, I just think, man, I wish I'd written that. I wish I was that smart. I wish I could boil it down into such clarity. So you will not want to miss him coming up later on in the show. But before the break, we were talking about the 2016 election. And I've got a simple idea. It might be a little bit crazy, but what the heck? I figure somebody's got to say it. I've been tracking similarities between the positions of Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush, and they're so closely aligned on almost every major issue. Yeah, there are some differences. Jeb Bush claims to be a small government guy while, trying to intrude the government into every aspect of our lives. But I thought maybe they could just form a new party called the Establishment Party, the elitist party, maybe the 1% party. Hillary makes a claim that she's going to protect the little guy, the middle class. She's going to protect him from the 1%. And I'm like, right, while being funded by the 1%. Yeah, how's that going to work out? But Jeb Bush is exactly the same. The guy is running around right now and he's telling everybody, I'm not a candidate right now, because he wants to fill. I don't know how you hold an avalanche. I don't think it fits in a dump truck, so you can't call it a truckload. But he wants to storehouse an avalanche of cash that he will then unleash on his Republican opponents in the primary and just decimate them, assassinate their character. This is the script that the establishment does. They do it every single time, and it works almost every single time. I almost squeaked out and made it into the general election, but we didn't have enough money to get our message out at all. But that's not the case with some of these other candidates. Rubio is raking in the cash. Ted Cruz, $31 million to super PACs in the first week. Scott Walker is not somebody to be underestimated, and he has put out some comments recently on immigration that have won him lavish praise from somebody who doesn't praise anyone easily, and that's Ann Coulter, who is a biting conservative critic. I'm trying to find a better word for that, but she never minces words, and she knows what she believes in, and she will call you out like nobody else. But back to this dream ticket for those who are in the political power class elite, the VIP of the VIP, the 1% of the 1%ers. This could be amazing for them. I mean, so let's take a couple of issues. Illegal immigration. Well, they're both for amnesty. You got Jeb Bush, who has said that the act of illegally coming to our country is an act of love, and we just need to love on you. So he wants a full-bore, unapologetic, unrestricted, open border, and he wants to give amnesty to anyone who comes here. He's been clear. At least he's been honest about it. I will give him that. So we give him a little check mark for honesty. But so right there, they're married at the hip, Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush. And then you take an issue like the Second Amendment. Jeb Bush acts like the Second Amendment is a social issue, and Hillary Clinton wants to disarm you. So they're not honest, but they basically let me say that Jeb Bush is not 100% where Hillary is, but he's not on our side. And when I say our side, I ain't talking about the Republicans. I'm talking about freedom. I'm talking about your right to keep and bear arms, which is a natural right that was simply acknowledged by government in the Second Amendment. That's your right to defend your life and defend your freedom from tyranny. Jeb Bush doesn't get it. Ted Cruz does. I haven't heard Scott Walker on it. I haven't really heard Rubio on it, so I can't judge those guys. But we're going to be keeping a scorecard in here. Bethany, we need to make up like a report card and put down these these different things. But now let's talk about Obamacare, which is really the poster child for the government takeover of an entire industry that has led to catastrophic consequences for individuals. There's a whole lot of people who are not recorded on any poll who have fallen out of the healthcare system because they can't afford it, and they had a good policy that they could afford, and now they have a policy that they can't afford that doesn't even cover what they need covered. So they're not in the healthcare system. They're going to be the people who get penalized for not having healthcare, or they're going to have the IRS on their doorstep, maybe an IRS SWAT team who's going to crash the door and come in and steal what's left of their savings in order to subsidize healthcare for other people. And if California has its way, including people who have come into the country illegally. Now, you'd think that is a good, solid, fiscal conservative. Let me say that again. Fiscal conservative. I'm doing air quotes, like I'm trying to put my words into italics. Because fiscal conservatism is supposedly the holy grail where everyone unites. But it just ain't so. Because Jeb Bush actually said that he would not sign or support a full repeal of Obamacare, even though the people made that absolutely clear in the last election that that's what they want. And there were as many Democrats pushing for that and as many independents as Republicans. Even though the voter turnout was low, the message was unmistakable. So right there, you have Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush in favor of government-controlled health care, which is going to lead to rationing and death panels and all kinds of other unintended consequences. We're going to have a guest on later, either this week or next, who has done a documentary on Obamacare, and I was watching the trailer earlier today. It is powerful. So, Bethany, how many is that? Is that 3? I think I did illegal immigration. I did Second Amendment and Obamacare. Okay, what's left? Education. How about Common Core? Is Jeb standing up and saying, hey, I don't want the government more involved, that actually parents ought to be in charge of their child's education? That's who used to teach the kids, was the parents. Oh, yep. Check. Jeb Bush is wildly in favor of Common Core, just like Hillary Clinton. They believe that the government... Actually, let me say that a different way. They agree with Karl Marx that the state should be in charge of the education of your children. When Karl Marx is giving you advice on education, it ain't about education. It's about indoctrination. And that's what we've got. And that's why there is a bipartisan movement. There is rising opposition across this country to the increase in the government takeover of the curriculum in our schools, which is known as the Common Core state standards. So, if you disagree with me, if you think Jeb Bush represents something else and you want to tell me something great about it, I'd love to hear it, because right now, when I look at Jeb Bush, I see Hillary Clinton's face on his body. I wish we were on TV because we could do a parody. But I don't see any difference. I'm looking at what they believe, their stated policies, and we will continue to talk about the 2016 election as time goes on. But love to get your input. 323-746-TALK, 323-746-8255 for those of you who are speeding down the freeway coming home from work. More on the Tim Donnelly Show right after this break. Stay tuned. I'm tempted to sing along, but this is talk radio, not sing radio. And I don't want to drive away my listeners, but I do want to bring listeners in. I do a lot of ranting, I'll admit it. There's a lot to rant about. There's a lot that we need to expose, but there's also a time for talking about what you can do to get involved. And this is one of those times, and I'm going to bring on my guest, who is Nathan Fatal of the Young Americans for Liberty. What is your exact title, Nathan?
Tim, it's a pleasure to be on. My title is West Regional Director for Young Americans for Liberty.
The West Regional Director. Well, first of all, welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show. And
thank you so much for having me. Yeah,
our pleasure. So you contacted me, and then I've heard from a bunch of my friends in the Liberty movement about an event that's going on is it just Saturday or Saturday and Sunday?
So our California State Convention is this Saturday at UCLA. It is going to be followed by a complimentary but optional free speech workshop on Sunday. The free speech workshop is one of only 3 in the country, but the state convention is one of 13 this year.
Nice. Yeah, we need that. Now, what is Young Americans for Liberty? Tell me about the organization.
Sure. So Young Americans for Liberty is a nonprofit, nonpartisan student group. Our mission is to identify, educate, train, and mobilize youth activists who are committed to winning on principle. And I distinguish that from just winning on party lines. Our goal, in a nutshell, is to cast leaders of tomorrow and reclaim the policies, candidates, and direction of our government, because we've come so far away from our basic founding principle of engaged citizenship. And that's ultimately what we want to bring to every college campus, regardless of what people's major is or regardless of what someone's demographic is. Engaged citizenship and showing people that they have a voice and how to use it.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, that's exactly what this show is about. So tell me, how is your message being received on the campuses?
It's being received very well, and we can talk in quantitative or qualitative terms. In terms of numbers, there are over 65 chapters in California. There are over 100 chapters on the West Coast, and nationwide we have over 600 chapters. As far as quality goes, every year our team grows stronger. We are getting more and more media attention locally, and in a few cases nationally. We have more people at every state convention, and people are coming out inspired. So it's being received very well. The kind of exception, or not so much an exception, but the only stipulation there is that it depends on the campus. You know, different campuses have a different culture. I just finished up a meeting at Occidental College, and it's a small private liberal arts school. There's a very progressive atmosphere. Whereas yesterday I was at Cal State Northridge and Cal State Channel Islands, and there's actually a little bit more of a conservative culture there. So it varies. We have to figure out what message works at different places.
Well, I mean,
ultimately,
I've heard that that Rand Paul, speaking about a number of the issues that I know are important to you and to me and to a lot of those who are in Young Americans for Liberty, talking about the government spying on us, talking about government intrusion into our lives. He's received standing ovations at places like Berkeley, of all
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you'll be happy to hear, Tim, that we actually just started a chapter at UC Berkeley.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Yep. One of the last few schools in the UC system.
The final frontier.
Did not have a YAL chapter.
The final frontier.
Absolutely. It's the belly of the beast, you might say.
Nice.
Now, yes, there are some issues that, regardless of left or right or partisan affiliation, that everyone can get behind, and privacy is one of them, and that's why Rand Paul received a standing ovation at UC Berkeley.
Absolutely.
That's why student groups calling attention to the incarceration nation that we've become are being well received at college campuses around the country, regardless of the college's culture. People are tired of the failing war on drugs. People are tired of the militarization of local police departments. They're tired of over-criminalization of petty crimes and people being penalized for just challenging authority. If you
agree with what you're hearing right now with Nathan, if this strikes a chord with you, you need to get out to the California State Convention of Young Americans for Liberty. It is this Saturday at UCLA. We're putting a link up on our website, on my Facebook. Do you have a link, Nathan, you can give out real quick?
Yeah, I don't know the exact link for the registration, but if you go to yaliberty.org, you'll see that we are still accepting registration for our state conventions.
Awesome.
And you'll have the opportunity to meet Vince Vaughn, who will be our keynote speaker.
Great, thank you.
And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
If liberty, if freedom is at the forefront of your mind and your concerns, then you've come to the right place. This is the Tim Donnelly Show, heard on the Radio Free California Network. And before the break, I was talking to Nathan Fatal, who is with the Young Americans for Liberty, who is really, this is an organization that is leading the charge and spreading freedom and liberty and the message of less government on our college campuses. And they're having what looks like a fantastic event. I wish I wasn't occupied for a good portion of Saturday. If I do get to this event, and I'm going to try, it isn't going to be for long, and I'll probably only get to say hello to some of my friends. But look, Vince Vaughn is going to be there. There's a number of other great speakers, and you guys have like a boot camp going on for activists. I think that was the part that struck me as most interesting.
That's right. So the first half of the day, we're going to have a boot camp where people will learn how to mobilize volunteers for causes that are important to them, how to organize precincts should they ever get involved in campaigns, and how to message the ideas of liberty to different demographics. And that's combined with a really original program where we're going to have a panel from Reason Magazine. We're going to hear from Vince Vaughn. It's going to be a great program overall, and people are coming from all over the state, from all different places, all different ages. So don't let the Young Americans part or the college part scare you away. We are at the forefront of a movement to reclaim this state and this country, and that does not discriminate by age. So
you don't care if some of us old folks show up, right?
Not at all. We are all in this together, and I want to see everyone who wants to fight the good fight at UCLA on Saturday. You can just show up, bring friends, bring family, bring everyone. We're all in this together, and this is not limited to college campuses. It's just where we happen to be doing very well.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for what you're doing. Thank you for coming on the Tim Donnelly Show. I have just checked. We have links up on our website and our Facebook. So if you're one of those people that has to, do everything in advance, go on there, register. You can find the links. But whatever you do, Get involved. Here's a great opportunity with a bunch of awesome people, and you can have fun while you're doing it. And by the way, maybe you'll even get a picture with a movie star who actually cares enough about this country to spend his Saturday inspiring a bunch of young people. Nathan, thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you on again with an update on what's going on with your work across the state.
Thank you, Tim. Keep up the good fight.
Take care. God bless and Godspeed. Coming up next on the Radio Free California Network, we've got a pretty amazing individual out of Wisconsin who did something. He saw a problem in his community, and he actually stood up. Instead of walking away, instead of hiding his head in the sand, he ran for office. And he won. And there is right now, if there is a battleground in the United States over freedom versus tyranny, it is Wisconsin. Every one of us saw the state capitol desecrated and taken over by union thugs who were putting their fists in the air and pushing a socialist labor movement, not unlike the forces that we've been trying to help people free themselves from in war after war after war. But this battle is a political battle. This battle is an important battle, and you need to know about it. So with the help of my friend Jake Jacobs, who will be a guest on the show, who has written a couple of fantastic books, including Mobocracy and Mother, Should I Trust the Government? That one's great. He introduced me to a friend of his, and he is on the guest line, and that is Representative Michael Schra. Michael, welcome to the program.
I'm happy to be on, Tim. Good to talk to you.
Excellent. I hope I didn't butcher your name.
No, perfect.
Okay, I got it right. It's a very unusual name, and you're a very unusual man. I mean, most people would run and hide, especially when the tactics of intimidation and threats. And I mean, I was reading this article by David French in the National Review Online. If you haven't read it, it's a long article. You need to read it because it is essentially the story of government abuse, government corruption that literally resulted in individuals who were simply exercising their First Amendment right to get involved in the political process, what we've been talking about here. And the result was police battering down a door after midnight of the home of someone who, at the very most, was suspected of possibly being involved in some kind of campaign finance improprieties. Never proven, no evidence, no due process, a complete, absolute, utter violation of their civil rights. And this is being done under what's called a John Doe investigation rule, but it's being done by a partisan attorney general named Chisholm, whose wife was a union shop for a steward for the teachers union, who had a grudge because she didn't like Scott Walker. And she didn't like the fact he won. She didn't like the fact that they couldn't get him out of office when they tried to recall him. And look, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars. They brought money in from all over the country and had shock troops everywhere. And it failed. But they have made the lives of a handful of core supporters of Governor Scott Walker a living hell. As a matter of fact, the comment of one individual in there named Eric O'Keefe was, the process is the punishment. Well, this is just un-American, and it's fundamentally wrong. And Michael, you've seen this up close and personal. Tell me how it affected your life and your business.
Well, we'd probably have to go back to 2008, Tim, and I just saw what the federal government was doing. I've always been political. I've always voted. Was never involved real heavily with, our local political party. But in 2008, I didn't like what I was seeing and got more involved in my county party. I own a small business. I own a 50s drive-in Oshkosh, established in 1947. It's been around a long time.
Do you guys serve cheeseburgers?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I wish you were closer.
And very good frozen custard. It's a very well-known place. If you talk to anybody that is from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, they know Leon's frozen custard. And I decided in 2010, the local party asked if I would put signs up for Scott Walker and Ron Johnson. And I looked at all the candidates, and I knew we needed to do something different in the state of Wisconsin. And I put a couple signs up, and just, to let you know, in the 25 years I've owned it, I've had both sides put signs up. They've approached me. If I think, the person is going to do a good job in the position, I let them put a sign up.
So you're talking about a sign in the window of your business?
Yeah, on my property.
Okay.
Yeah, on my property.
Sure.
And so, I put these signs up, and I received an email a couple days later, and it was from the local teachers union president. And he basically threatened me. He said, if you don't take the signs down, I will never come to your restaurant again, and I will tell, all of our employees to boycott your business. And I took a couple days to think about it. I actually printed it off. I went home. I prayed about it. I talked about it with my wife, because this was all happening when Act 10 was going on here in Madison. And we had 50,000 people.
Act 10 is the controversial bill to tell our listeners what it does.
But it basically eliminated collective bargaining, and it required that state employees, teachers, whatever, any state employee had to contribute to their health benefits and their pension. And we were just asking them for a couple % more. State benefits were very good in the state, and we were asking them to raise their health insurance, to contribute to their health insurance to the degree of 12%, and their pension.
And this, in large part, was because the state was in financial troubles. I mean, you were in a
absolutely.
deficit, and you were looking to have everybody do their part, just like millions and millions of Americans pay all of their health care, not 12%. Increase. Anyway, go on.
Absolutely. So, I thought about it, and I wrote the I won't call him a gentleman. I wrote him a nice letter back, and I basically said, you're entitled to your opinions. This is my First Amendment right to do this, and so he, in fact, used the Oshkosh area school district's email servers and sent out this email that basically said, that I support Governor Walker, and that, we should all boycott the business and make them feel the pain. And we've got a lot of union representation in the city, and, I kind of stayed quiet about it. I didn't want, protesters as what was going on in Madison at my business in Oshkosh, and just kind of stayed quiet about it. But the word ended up getting out, and people came out of the woodwork to support me.
Wow.
And somebody, came up and said, why don't you consider running for office? And I went home that night. I gave a little update on the boycott that was taking place. And
Michael,
I jokingly said, yeah.
Let me stop you right there, because we've got to take a break, but I want to hear this, and I want our listeners to hear this. This is a great story of a man who put everything on the line. You're not going to want to miss it on the Tim Donnelly Show. Stay tuned. Hey, if you're just tuning in to the Tim Donnelly Show, where have you been? We're having a great time. We're having a great discussion. And whatever you do, stay tuned from now until the end of the show because it's just going to get better. We're talking right now to Representative Michael Schraw from Wisconsin. Now, Michael, you were, just before the break, you were telling us about how you own a diner, which serves amazing cheeseburgers and some kind of, you said custard?
Frozen custard.
That doesn't sound like chocolate. But you have a business, a very well-known business, and over the years you've put up various signs for different candidates. You've never been, you've always just picked the individual, not necessarily the party. But this time, when you decided you would support Scott Walker because you felt the state needed a change in direction, you were threatened by the what was his title? The teachers union representative, who then followed through on his threat and used, I assume, government computers to send out all this information to essentially boycott your business. And then what happened?
Right. Well, he's no longer working for the school district. I went after him, and I actually went after the incumbent, who was a moderate in this seat, and he was one of the 4 Republicans, actually, that voted against Act 10. And he ended up, not wanting to challenge me. He announced his retirement, and it was a pretty heated primary. There were 2 other candidates, and I ended up, I was probably the underdog because I had no political experience, but I ended up knocking on 12,000 doors.
Wow.
And
now, I want to back you up.
Won the primary by 61%.
I want to back you up 1 minute because you were starting to say you went home that night, and I had to interrupt you to take a break. So you went home that night, you talked to your wife.
Yeah, and I jokingly said, there are a number of people that are suggesting that I run for political office. And
what did she say?
She smiled at me, and she said, "Why don't you do it? You're."
He sounds just like my wife.
She knew how frustrated I was with the federal government, and I think if you want to change things on a federal level, you start at the local level and state level. And she encouraged me, and she's been a great support. This is not an easy thing to do to leave a business. I bring that business experience to the legislature, and I was a freshman last session in my first term, and I am now serving on the powerful Joint Finance Committee shaping fiscal policy.
That's amazing.
And, yeah, it really is. It's very exciting to be involved. We have a great governor who had bold reforms. I'm very proud of our governor. I believe he will be our nominee, and I'm predicting that he's going to be our next president. We need somebody, that is going to lead the country, and Governor Walker, absolutely knows how to do that.
We certainly absolutely need a leader. But I want to take you back just for a minute, because a lot of the listeners of the Tim Donnelly Show are people who have thought about doing what you said and never even made it to the conversation with the spouse. So what did you do after you talked to your wife the next day? I mean, you decided, how did you form a committee? I mean, you knew a few people in politics, and you said you knocked on 12,000 doors. That's a particular interest to me and my listeners. If you would just walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I formed, a kitchen cabinet, some of my closer friends in the party and people that I knew would be honest with me. And I decided to, it's hard to take out an incumbent, and very difficult. And I didn't want to, just spin my wheels and not get anywhere. And so I decided that I was going to knock on 500 doors initially, and I was going to, test the waters. And actually, those 500 doors, I had 495 people tell me, "Hey, I'll support you."
Wow!
And so that was my indication that I knew that the former representative, was not really representing the district. It's a predominantly Republican district, 60%, and people were ready for a change. And I just worked my tail off, and I would recommend to anybody that's thinking about it is to have a good core of people around you. Door knocking and getting out to events and being involved and listening is the big thing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Can you stay with us for one more segment?
Sure, not a problem.
Okay. If you're just tuning in, we've got Representative Michael Schraw from Wisconsin. We're going to take your calls, 323-746-TALK. Stay tuned. Coming up at the top of the hour, we've got a treat for you. Victor David Hansen, an expert in everything California, followed by a special guest coming in studio who will have probably traveled the furthest amount of anyone except my guest who's on the phone, if we could get him in here. And by the way, Representative Michael Schraw, welcome back to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Good to be with you, Tim.
Hey, when I went out on break, I went downstairs and was talking to the owners of the building that we're in, and there is a shrine to the Green Bay Packers in this building.
And for good reason.
Yes. So if you came here, you would be in good company. But before the break,
I'm coming out to San Diego at the end of July for a conference.
Well, I hope I get a chance to meet you in person, because
maybe we can do that.
Absolutely. I am really excited about what you guys are doing there. And I was describing this segment before in a previous hour that if there was a battleground in the United States politically, it's Wisconsin. And the work that you're doing is critically important. So the aftermath of the battle at the Capitol, where they tried to recall Governor Walker, they tried to defeat his bill, but the reform passed, and no teachers died as a result. As a matter of fact, they paid a couple cents more on the dollar for their health care, but the state is in much healthier condition. You guys saved what? You cut $3 billion off your budget. Now you have a surplus. Things are looking up.
Yep. We have a rainy day fund, largest in the state's history. We're doing some very innovative, bold reforms and lowering property taxes. It is exciting to be, part of everything that's going on here. I was encouraged and inspired by a lot of the gentlemen that took the Act 10 vote. And, we recently passed right to work a month ago. And, we saw Act 10 2.0 start. It was much smaller. There was maybe 2,000 or 3,000 protesters. And, I have been spit on. I've been followed back to my office, jeered at. For the last 3 years, we have from noon to 1 o'clock in our rotunda in the Capitol. We call them the Capitol Singers, where they just, yell and scream and sing their union chants. And, it's quite something to be part of all of it. And I'm very proud of my colleagues that I work with, especially the ones that took the Act 10 vote and got the state on the right track. Well,
a state like California, I was in the state legislature. I was in the assembly. You're in what is the assembly there, right? You're not a state senator. Right, you're an assemblyman like I was. Right. We were so jealous. Excuse me. They haven't installed my cough button yet, so there was nothing I could do there. But we were so jealous of what your governor was doing, because he was basically protecting all of the citizens of your state and putting your state on a sound fiscal path. Whereas California, we have public sector unions that are so far out of control. They literally control the state of California and have more power than any other entity in our state.
Yeah. Yeah, our pensions here in Wisconsin are 99% fully funded. We've got a great thing going here, and we go to a number of my colleagues are involved in the American Legislative Exchange Council, and we go to these conferences. That's what I'm coming in at the end of July, and the other states. It is really neat to see because exactly what you're saying we see from other members of legislatures around the country that really looked at the reforms that Scott Walker had implemented in the legislature, and we do get applauded, and you know what, it's not that we're looking for that. We take the pledge to put our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor on the line, and there are sacrifices that are involved. I mean, I'm in the Capitol 4 days a week, and I don't see my family nearly as much, but these are important times. When our freedoms are being eroded to the rate that they are and our Constitution is being trampled on, I just feel that I want my children to be able to enjoy the America that I knew growing up. And so it's been exciting, and I'm proud to be part of everything that's been happening here in Wisconsin.
Well, if you're just tuning in, we are talking to Wisconsin Representative Michael Schraw. And if you want to weigh in on this conversation, our number is 323-746-TALK, 323-746-8255. Representative Schraw, you took a risk by supporting someone, which shouldn't be penalized the way that you were by a teachers union. That's thuggery. But what was interesting is the people responded. So your business wound up not only surviving, but thriving because you took a stand.
Yeah, absolutely. I had people coming out of the woodwork saying, this isn't right, what's happening to you. And people that hadn't been to our restaurant in, a few years, said, tell your boss that we support him. And that was really heartwarming. And probably the best thing is I don't think that the liberals really knew that they were waking, a sleeping giant. And not that I'm a giant or anything, but I'm getting, I'm involved in some, really interesting things that are going on here in Madison. And, I authored a Firearms Freedom Act.
We like the sound of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the interesting thing is there was a parade that I was at, and it was 95 degrees in a July, and I'm just drenched in sweat, and we're getting towards the end of it, and I'm waving and handing the candy out, and I look over to my right, and I look up on one of the lawns, and here is that teachers union president, that went after me in the email, and I smiled at him, and I'm waving, and he waved back, and then when he realized who I was, he just put his hand down and lowered his head. And, that...
I wish I could have seen that on video. That's priceless.
It was priceless. Yeah. It made everything worthwhile. And, as I said, there's a lot of sacrifice. You still got to knock on doors. I'm gone nights when I'm in district, when I'm, meeting with my townships or constituents, and there are a lot of sacrifices that the family goes through, but I love it. My family is very supportive, and I have 3 beautiful daughters and a beautiful wife, and just really enjoy what I'm doing, and so proud to be part of Governor Walker's legislature here in the state of Wisconsin.
Well, I think that you are what the founders envisioned when they said citizen legislator or citizen representative. And
right.
I know the sacrifices personally that you're making. And I thank you, even though I'm not one of your constituents, but I admire, I've been on your Facebook page, and you take a lot of grief, which
right.
The only time you take grief is when you're being effective, and you clearly are, and you're leading, and we have a shortage of leaders in this country. So Thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the great work. But I do have one final question for you. It's a very serious question.
Sure. Okay.
How far is your diner from Lambeau Field?
It's a little less than an hour. So if you come to Green Bay, get a hold of me, and it's not too far of a drive.
Okay. Well, I am a serious cheeseburger aficionado, so there will be a review if I do make it out your way. But look, thank you for coming on the Tim Donnelly Show. I know you took time out. You were having dinner with your daughter tonight. Right. You're doing exactly what we expect our representatives and our leaders to do, and keep up the good work, and know that you have fans across the country, and that we will be praying for you, and we will be praying for Governor Walker, and we will be praying for this country. Thank you for coming on.
Very much appreciated, Tim. Thank you very much. God bless.
Godspeed. If you've been listening, or if you just tuned in, we have an exciting hour in store for you. 323-746-TALK if you want to be part of that. 323-746-8255, the Tim Donnelly Show on the Radio Free California Network. Sadly, the Tim Donnelly Show is going to be over in an hour, and I'm just starting to have fun. I mean, it's so inspiring to talk to so many people that are willing to do so much for their freedom. And, you know, all week I've been telling you about the High Desert Association of Realtors and how they were putting on an event to teach you how to secure your own community, how to have a neighborhood watch. And alas, that day is here. They're having the 3 o'clock meeting, and the 6 o'clock meeting is upon us. So, you know, I want to thank all of you who went out there and joined in that. You know, you don't necessarily have to run for state office in order to make a difference. You just have to do your part. And there is another way to interact with the High Desert Association of Realtors, and that is the Senior Citizen Resource Fair, which is going to be Tuesday, April 28th from 11 to 1. I think my wife was right. She said, I need to drink some tea. The High Desert Association of Realtors will host a special event for local seniors at their office right there in Hesperia. This event will feature speakers on a number of topics that are essential to seniors, including reverse mortgages, fraud protection, property taxes, and all available local services. And look, when they say all, they will tell you all, because they're very comprehensive people. Representatives from mortgage companies, the county of San Bernardino, Aging and Adult Services, Tax Assessor's Office, the First District Supervisor's Office, home health care, and transportation agencies will be present. So if you ever had any questions about any of these things, look, they're going to help you out. The program begins at 11 and will be followed by a Q&A period. So you'll get to ask your questions and then time to visit with all the local agencies. Space is limited, so if you're interested, if you're a senior and you're interested, RSVP to 760-244-8841, 760-244-8841, or email to Valerie@vvar.com. And you can always find this information on our website, timdonnellyshow.com. If you have any questions, you can always call our office. We will help you, connect you, because it's important to be connected. And thank you to the High Desert Association of Realtors. You know, after talking with Representative Michael Schroff from Wisconsin, first of all, I want to go Bethany, be honest. You want to go to his diner, don't you? And get one of those cheeseburgers.
Oh, I want to go watch the football game and get a cheeseburger, Tim. Heck yeah.
I know. I mean, it just sounds like fun. I don't know about that custard stuff, frozen. I've never really had that. Is that like frozen yogurt?
Slightly, yes. The texture's a little bit different.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's delicious.
But it would be fun to go, especially. Now, I know Governor Walker's not officially in the race, but it would be, I believe all indications are that he's going to enter the race. They've been throwing everything but the kitchen sink at him, and so far nothing is really sticking. So I think we're going to see him join the massive, I guess instead of calling it the diversity pool, I'm going to call it the deep end of the pool, where you actually have a deep bench and you have serious ideas and you have people who have accomplished things. You may not like or agree with Governor Walker or Ted Cruz or, any of the other, Carly Fiorina, Dr. Ben Carson, who isn't in the race but has been making noise about it. But you can't argue that they haven't done something. You may not like what they've done. You may not agree with their positions, but they are credible, impressive candidates who have accomplished things in their lives. And if we could do for California what Governor Walker has done for Wisconsin, if we literally only addressed the government unions, if that's the only thing we did, and we negotiated reforms that were fair not only to the taxpayers, but also to the members of the unions. Because, look, I want to make one thing clear. We don't hate unions on this show, and we certainly don't hate people who work in unions. Anybody who works is a friend of the Tim Donnelly Show. You may not know it at first light, but if you listen long enough, you'll figure it out. But we don't like government union thugs, and that's who leads the government unions. That's who takes money. They steal money from the members who are forced to join a union in order to work in certain professions. And then they use that money, in many cases, against the interests of the membership, and they use that money to legally bribe politicians to increase the size, scope, and reach of government. And that we object to. Our government was supposed to be limited. It was supposed to be constrained by the Constitution. And if you want to see what a government looks like that's out of control, if you want to see what government looks like that has no restraint, that is controlled by powerful forces, you're going to want to stay tuned for my segment at the top of the hour with Victor Davis Hanson, who is an extraordinary, articulate, intelligent expert in all things California. And I am looking forward to getting his take on the drought, on this Earth Day nonsense, on unchecked, out of control illegal immigration. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial. More to come after the break.
And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Welcome to the final hour on this Wednesday of the Tim Donnelly Show on the Radio Free California Network. Hey, look, if you've been listening and I've been talking about freedom, and I've been talking about you doing your part. This is the last day for you to sign up online to support the Friends of the NRA, and you need to support that. It ain't about whether you like guns. It's about whether you love freedom. So call Mike Davis at 714-368-0451 or go online, friendsofnra.org. It is the High Desert's Friend of the NRA yearly fundraiser this Friday at the Victorville Hilton Garden. And without any further ado, I want to welcome our guest, who he has a resume that is so impressive. And if you've ever read any of his writings, Dr. Victor Davis Hanson, he's an American military historian. He is a syndicated columnist. And once you've read one of his columns, you will be addicted. The clarity and the points that he makes are extraordinary. He's a former classics professor, scholar of ancient warfare. He's been a commentator on modern warfare and contemporary politics for National Review and other media outlets. He was a professor of classics at Cal State University, Fresno, and is currently the Martin and Illie Anderson Senior Fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. He is also an author of Mexifornia and Carnage and Culture and a number of other books. Dr. Hanson, welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. I've been a fan for years of your writing, and even today, I actually invited you on here to talk about the drought because you've written probably the best argued and reasoned articles on the drought, along with history, because if I'm not mistaken, your family has farmed here for generations.
Yeah, since 1874. I'm sitting in a house that my great-great-grandmother built right now.
Wow. I guess I was understating it a little bit. But I was so struck by your comments on the hypocrisy that I put them in my email for Earth Day today, and yet I invited you on here to talk about the drought. I mean, one of the things that you've made clear, and you've really focused on the hypocrisy of the environmentalists, who I think that your comment in one of the articles was they're not one of them is taking a shower without using imported water.
Yes, that's particularly ironic for the people, the 20 million people that live in the San Diego or Los Angeles or Bay Area regions, all of their water. I think Los Angeles has about 15% local water from their aquifer. It's not much. And the Bay Area is about, depending on whether you're in San Jose or San Francisco, it ranges from about 15 to 30%. But all the rest of it either comes from the California Water Project from Northern California or the Sierra Nevada snowmelt. And people, when you go there and speak on the drought, as I have, most people have no idea where their water comes from. But they do have an image that farmers use a fantastic amount of water and don't produce very valuable products, and then we should stop this. But their figures, both on where their water comes from and then the role of agriculture, are usually vastly erroneous.
Well, walk us through that, because one of the things we've been doing on this show is focusing in on specifics and education, because I think clearly people are paying attention now that they've been threatened by, big government. So what? Well,
let me give you an example. Everybody says that agriculture uses 80% of the water and only produces somewhere between 2 and 5% GDP. And in fact, that figure of 80% is the potential water that is in reservoirs at one time that was at one time allotted for agriculture. But in many cases, there's been a zero allotment. So if water is in Millerton Lake above Fresno and it's supposedly agriculture, but 1 million acre feet have been let out the San Joaquin River, and it did not go into irrigation district canals, but went out all the way to the ocean for fish restoration, they count that as farm water. Or I have a little farm when I'm in an irrigation district in a normal year, not like the last 4. Water is, even when it's sent out to agriculture, about half of it goes into recharge ponds that help not just farming, but the water table that the municipalities draw on. So more accurate figures, about 40% of the water in California is used by agriculture. And then the GDP is equally erroneous, because if you've got a semi-truck and it's going down the road full of canning tomatoes to a processing plant in San Jose, the fuel that drives that truck, the tires, they're all agricultural related. If you go to Whole Earth and Palo Alto, that local California produce creates the idea of Whole Earth, just like restaurants would not exist without California vegetables and fruit.
Right.
At the prices they argue. So
now, one distinction I want to make.
It's a much bigger ripple effect than people give it credit for.
I appreciate you cutting right to the quick on that, because basically it's half what the media is pushing, number one. But number two, let's talk about the environmental portion for a minute, because the environment as government mandated stake at what I call the water table is relatively new. I mean, there's always been, we've always had to have some amount of recharge, some amount of water that's in marshes and wetlands, and that's part of the environment. It's static. It's not necessarily being washed out to sea. But then there's another portion of it that they're literally letting flow through our rivers at a time of extreme drought. They're letting it flow on behalf of the fish, and that water's just lost out under the Golden Gate Bridge. Am I misstating it?
No, you're right, because the two great watersheds in California, the Sacramento watershed and the San Joaquin, and from the beginning of the drought till now, it's very controversial, but somewhere between 6 and 8 million acre feet. So it's maybe 20 of Pyramid Lakes up there on I-5 and the Great Round have been let out to the ocean, whether for smelt restoration in the Delta or artificially reintroducing salmon in the San Joaquin River or scenic bank restoration. And that was never the intention of the California Water Project. It was designed for flood control, hydroelectric production, recreation, and agriculture. And the environmentalists decided very late in the game, not only that we would not build a third phase of reservoirs, but we would take the existing reservoirs, which they opposed, and use it for a new use, that is to guarantee 365 days a year running rivers, which nature, even in the 19th century, was not able to do without reservoirs.
And here's what...
They took an artificial... Yeah, that's very ironic. They took an artificial asset, which they damned as artificial, then they used it for their own artificial purposes and called it environmentally natural.
And here's another irony, that Jerry Brown's father was the one pushing for the State Water Project, which was, as you said, never completed. I mean, when was the last time we ever built a dam in this state?
Well, outside of Los Angeles municipalities, the New Melones Dam of 1983 was the last big all use. Luckily we did. It was almost 3 million acre feet. But what they call tertiary reservoirs in 500 to 2,500 feet were designed by our grandparents to add another 10 or so million acre feet. And every fifth or sixth year, when you have a wet year, the reservoirs filled up in the High Sierra and in Northern California. And then that 1 year where it was just fantastic snow and rain, that these lower ones would fill up and they would last for 4 or 5 years. We never built any of them. We canceled all of them.
Yeah, and that's what we needed. We needed that during the good years. And then...
Yes, and we would have had 10 million acre feet right now. We'd have an extra 10 million acre feet. We could have gone for another 2 years.
But the real threat, which you alluded to, but I want to highlight it, is that you were saying we are literally letting water out for the environment, for fish restoration, even at this point.
Yes, we let out about 80,000 acre feet, which would have, would have given 40,000 acres of row crop. Or
wow.
It would have given about 100,000 people water all year round. Just about 3 weeks ago in the Stanislaus River watershed. So we're still doing it. The environmentalists are having a hard problem doing it because they've done it so much and there's been a drought and there's no water left in the reservoirs, essentially. But again, they're very selective in what they do. They don't let water out of the Hetch Hetchy conduit and reservoir for fish restoration, even though it flows right across the San Joaquin River on its way to San Francisco because
right.
It's their own drinking water.
Because that's the water that takes care of the Bay Area and the Silicon Valley, the heart of the enviro extremists. Hey, I want to get into what we can do from here and what you would advise if Governor Brown were to call you tomorrow. But can I hold you over for a break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, your calls, 323-746-TALK. If you got any questions, or you can tweet them to me at Tim Donnelly Show for Dr. Victor Davis Hanson. More on the Tim Donnelly Show. Don't go away. If you're just tuning into the Tim Donnelly Show on the Radio Free California Network, we are talking to Dr. Victor Davis Hanson, who is an expert in all things California. His family's lived here since just after California began. And Dr. Hanson, one of the things first of all, I want to thank you for being one of the very few in academia to actually point out the hypocrisy of the environmentalists and all the major environmental organizations who are fully on board with penalizing all water users, whether they're agricultural, whether they're in the city, anywhere but San Francisco and Silicon Valley. But at the same time, they support policies to have a wide open border. They support policies that make California the destination of choice for illegal aliens from all over the world and all over the country. And you've actually pointed that out, that puts even more pressure on our limited resources, given their lack of action, of actually...
Yeah. We have 40 million Californians, and we have the highest percentage in our history that are foreign-born, 26%. If you believe in sort of open borders and you want 1/4 of the population foreign-born residents, then at least it's incumbent upon you to provide them the infrastructure so they'll have water, or that they won't impinge on the water resources of other people. One thing we forget is that a lot of people just don't take the effort to get basic knowledge about our water. For example, one of these 8 or 9 reservoirs that was canceled by Jerry Brown during his first term, say Temperance Flat, a very minor reservoir of about 1 million square acre feet that was proposed above Billiken Lake, that would have given us more water for the same price than a desalinization plant. Desalinization plant's about $1 billion. The one going north of San Diego, Temperance Flat, would be about $1 billion. But the difference is Temperance Flat offers 1 million acre feet, not 50.
Wow.
50, and that's the difference, because we're getting just staggering magnitude when you get a reservoir. It's gravity fed, and it feeds into existing infrastructure. So, yeah, we can get 5 or 6 acre feet per week or whatever from a desalinization plant, but it runs about $3,000 per acre foot, maybe $4,000 to $5,000, whereas out of a reservoir, you're talking about $200 to $400.
Wow, that's a staggering.
So it's a much better. It is, and we had all sorts of plans in the California Water Project to build about 10 to 15 more of these reservoirs that were in the foothills. They went the ones that the low-hanging fruit was already taken, but these were foothill emergency reservoirs that would have been full for 4 or 5 years, every 4 or 5 years. And then we had the Klamath Alpaw project that envisioned a lake almost the size of Lake Tahoe, 13 million acre feet, which would have supplied San Francisco with 50 years of water. But the problem we're having now is that we did a lot of dumb things. We not only canceled water projects, but we let existing supply go out to the ocean for environmental utopian fantasies. And then we're in a different state. We're not 20 million people anymore. When these projects were envisioned, we're 40 million. And we've had droughts before. People keep saying it's global warming, but boy, we had the 1929 to 34 drought, the 1989 to 93 drought, 76. A lot of people remember to 78. So we've had 3 and 4 year droughts. So we usually have one about every 20 years. So it was a no-brainer what you had to do.
But the big difference here, which you've stated very clearly, is if Governor Brown, because he bears a lot of responsibility because I
think he does. Yes.
He was pushing to end these projects and create this environmental utopia back in the 70s when he was governor after his dad, and now here he's had 5 years. This has not been news to anybody that we are not storing enough water and that they've been letting water out of what little we've stored, and yet. If he had completed some of these projects and we had done what Arizona has done. Arizona's an arid climate, and yet they're not worried about water because they made provision for the bad years.
Yes, and you can see that even Los Angeles, which is in theory liberal, but privately under the radar, they have been building, they're the only area in the United States really that has built municipal reservoirs, and they draw from not only the Owens Valley and the California Water Project, but the Colorado River. And so they're in a better position in a lot of places in California because while they talked green, they were more traditional privately. And in the Silicon Valley area, as I said, 8 million people, and just about on average 70% of their water is imported of the type of projects that they oppose. But all this is going to be academic because this is really next year is the year, because after 4 years, the aquifer has been dropping where I live. I had a well at 50 feet, and now it's the water table's 80 feet. That well went dry. It's an old one, and it's dropping about 10 feet every 6 weeks. And we have a big aquifer. And the irony is that, well, San Francisco and Los Angeles, for take two examples, that have half, basically, the state's population in the greater areas, they're dependent on, they have better supplies of surface water. They don't have aquifers. So when push comes to shove next year, if this continues, the center of the state where wells are going dry actually has a resource. They can go deeper. It's going to be very expensive, but they do have an aquifer. Los Angeles does not. San Francisco does not. So these 8-9 million per person clusters, if we don't get surface water and recharge the aquifer, I don't know what's going to happen. Desalinization, as I said, is not the amount of acre feet and the cost and the energy cost isn't going to do it. Dr. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you for coming on the Tim Donnelly Show. If you want to follow his writings, and I'm hoping you'll come back on, you can just go to timdonnellyshow.com or victorhanson.com. More coming up after this break on the Tim Donnelly Show. And unfortunately, our secret guest, who has driven a long, long way to visit us, is stuck in that ungodly traffic on the 15 freeway. But with the help of technology, we're going to bring him here into studio. So I am pleased and privileged to introduce a man who I hope will become a lifelong friend. He is a defender of liberty. He is the chairman of the Adams County Republican Party in Colorado, and he is out here on his way to the Radio Free California Network studios as we speak. Anil, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Assemblyman Donnelly. Thank you so much for letting me call in.
Oh no, my pleasure. I'm going to owe you. I don't know what kind of dinner I'm going to owe you now for the abuse you're taking in California traffic. Now I'm afraid you're never going to move here.
I've been here many times, and my wife loves it out here. But the one thing I do not like is your traffic. I mean, you guys are number one in the traffic jam. So
yeah, we are. When I was in college, my grandparents came out from Florida, and I took my grandparents out on my sailboat. And my grandfather loves to fish, and he's used to being on a power boat, and everything's a lot of movement and pressure, and he has to do everything. Well, he got to lean back against a nice incline on my sailboat, let his line go out. I handled the boat. It was peaceful and beautiful, a nice little breeze, sunny, warm, perfect climate. And he said, I think I could move to California. And then 15 minutes later, we were in traffic driving to the airport, and he said, forget it. But
yeah.
Anyway, we're sorry that you are not able to be here sitting across from me, but I know that you are en route, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet you. What you're doing in Colorado, I don't think a lot of people in the country know. And one of the things we're trying to do with this radio program is reach people, not only with the truth. Look, we will always tell it like it is. And I know you've been listening, and we don't mince words, and we don't apologize for politicians that do the wrong thing. We're not worried about access because I don't care if politicians come on this show. What I care about are whether or not people who love freedom come on this show and are willing to engage in the battle to secure our freedoms that are under assault. And you guys in Colorado have done some extraordinary things. I mean, you got in the national headlines by recalling a number of these anti-freedom, anti-Second Amendment legislators, Democrats, all. And now there's something else going on. Tell us about what's going on in the Republican Party in Colorado that could give California a little bit of hope.
Well, first of all, I want to say that you have been an encouragement to those outside of the state of California with your race last year, and your passionate defense of our border. And Tim, it's just influenced a lot of people. And in Colorado, again, we had 2 recalls, and the third Democrat state senator pulled out. And so the people have had enough. Colorado has a law where we're allowed to do recalls after a certain amount of months in office. And within the state Republican Party, on March 14th, this past March 14th, we've elected a new chairman, the former chairman of the county that I represent right now. And many people have stated that, oh, no, there's no way you can beat an establishment leader. There's no way, there's just no way to defeat the establishment. But I took it upon myself to travel to different counties and let them know that we can return conservative leadership back to the Republican Party if we stand on our Constitution and we stand on our Republican platform. And this individual named Steve House won the election for state party, and it just shocked the establishment right to its core in the state of Colorado.
That's amazing, because in so many cases, as you've witnessed, and because if you follow politics in Colorado, of course, now with the internet, we follow them everywhere. And, you can't ignore what happened to Chris McDaniels running for Senate in Mississippi. And then, of course, my race here in California and a number of other races where you've had the establishment come in and take out the more conservative candidate and essentially pick the candidate for the people with money and in a whole lot of other ways that we don't need to go into every detail because it's insider baseball. But the bottom line is, I don't know what you guys did in Colorado, but you actually got the establishment to back off, and the people benefited because instead of having an establishment candidate for your Senate seat, your U.S. Senate seat, I believe is it the fellow named Gardner?
Yeah, Cory Gardner is our U.S. Senator that was elected, and we're happy that he was elected, but he's not really with our side. He is with more of the establishment. He backed up the establishment leaders. But
Well-
we'll put pressure on them to lean in our direction.
Well, then what I was going to say is not germane, but I'm encouraged to see people taking a stand for what they believe in and actually winning, and because that's it really doesn't matter what party you're in if you're not going to stand on your beliefs.
That's exactly correct. And there was also some undercurrents here from last summer where we had a former congressman, a good man. He was basically, his name is Bob O'Prey. He was handpicked by the establishment leadership. And what they did was they worked with Washington, RNC, and Rance Priebus, well, not Rance Priebus, but the Republican Governors Association, and there was some money that was funneled in to, in a party situation, you're never supposed to interfere in the primary, before the primary. And that there was an interference, and the candidate that the grassroots liked was Tom Tancredo, the former congressman.
Right, that's right.
Border control individual, good man. And that kind of set everything off with grassroots. Some people quit and became unaffiliated. I tell people not to do that because you basically give up your seat when you become unaffiliated. But some people stuck in there and got into the fight, and this whole thing happened because of grassroots. And now the party is back in control with the grassroots, but we have to continue to fight for it. And I heard about what happened here in California, Sacramento, within your own party. But to the people, no way. The power belongs to the people. The Constitution says we the people. And do not sit back. Do not give up. Continue to fight, because California is at the forefront of a lot of things that Colorado is going through. We've had a lot of people that moved into Colorado, and I'm new to Colorado, about maybe 5-6 years now. But we've had a lot of people that moved to Colorado came from California. And they were tired of losing jobs. But the problem, a lot of them ended up voting for the same people they voted for in California.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, probably coming up the pass finally. But yeah, you're exactly right. And it's interesting. I wondered how this Bob Beaupre fella got in there, because I attended the Republican Governor Association convention in Arizona, and I met Bob Beaupre, but I didn't meet Tom Tancredo. Wasn't there, and I don't know if he was invited or not. But once they met me, they were real nice to my face, but they were plotting behind my back to support my opponent, and they did support my opponent. The minute he announced, they put it on their Facebook page. They play favorites, but then they pretend to the donors that we're just going to, pick the best candidate. And what they did in Colorado, a friend of the show and a writer for my friend Anne Marie Morell at Politichicks, broke that story, and it was really dirty politics that our own party was playing on us, and it is a reason why the fastest growing party in the state of California is neither. And
yeah, and I was just going to ask. I mean, people want transparency. If they don't get it, they're going to get it some direction.
Anil, we're gonna take a break, and hopefully we'll reconnect with you on a better cell. If you want to weigh in on this conversation, our phone number is real simple. It's 323-746-TALK, 323-746-TALK. We are talking with Anil Matai of Colorado. He is a leader out there in the Adams County Republican Party, and you can talk to him coming up after the break. It was President Ronald Reagan who said that freedom is only one generation away from being lost. And freedom has never been so fragile. But, there's something you can do about it. And yes, I do repeatedly talk about you getting involved and taking action, because that's what America is about. We're a do-it-yourself country. But the Firearms Policy Coalition is fighting for your Second Amendment rights, and they make it easy for you to do it. It's kind of like paint by number. You join, which I'm a proud member, at joinfpc.org, joinfpc.org, or simply go to the timdonnellyshow.com, click their link, join. You'll pay a small monthly fee. I'm sorry, not a small monthly fee. You'll pay a small fee to join and become a member of an organization that is at the forefront of defending your freedom. There's nothing more important you can do except continue to tune back in to the Tim Donnelly Show. And we're going to check back in right now with my friend Anil Matai, who is the Adams County Republican chair and has been battling California traffic. Are you still there, Anil?
I'm still here, yes.
All right. Well, you're going to get to pick what you want to eat for dinner, and it's on me. So, you better start thinking about that now, because you've certainly put in a lot of pain. Where'd you drive from? Los Angeles?
Yes, Commerce.
Wow, that's a hike. That is a hike. That is a sacrifice. So what I think our listeners would like to know is, if you had any advice for California, what would you say?
Find people who have good moral character, who are going to fight for what's right, and get them elected. Start off at the local level, just like the Wisconsin representative had mentioned. Everything, just like Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. Forget what the media has to say and the leftists have to say. Stand on truth and fight for it. And California, it's very important that you do it right now and continue to do it.
Yeah, because today is Earth Day, and they've used things like Earth Day to infiltrate the schools and brainwash our youth. And so, in addition to politics, wouldn't you say we also need to infiltrate the culture, the education establishment? Instead of shying away and saying, "Hey, that's Hollywood," we need to go into Hollywood and take it over and start making movies. We need to go into the music industry and have great artists who are pushing a different message.
I totally agree with that. Politics, Tim, is downstream of culture. And if we don't change the culture, you're not going to change the politics. And it requires people. It requires churches. It requires conservative groups. It requires everyone to stand up and influence their local communities, their school boards. In Colorado, this is a municipal year where we are running on school board and municipal races, and a lot of people are looking at 2016. And I tell my Adams County Republicans, no, we're going to focus on local races, because the Democrats do exactly the same thing. And if we don't change the school boards, we're going to set up our children to fail if they decide to go to public school.
That's exactly right. And I believe that when you study your opponents and you see how they have beat you, I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said, that we need to start local. We need to think small and then grow it and be organized. What got you initially involved in politics? Because I think a lot of people, they think of politics and they think, oh, these people have been in it a million years. But where did you start?
So in late 2010, I moved with my wife and kids to the Denver area, just north of that suburb, Adams County. And about a year later, I just felt like, instead of complaining, let me do something. And I felt led to get involved at the local county party level. And through that, it was 2012, I decided to do something completely foolish. I thought I could run for representative, Republican National Committee, a delegate at the Florida Convention, being new to politics. A lot of people have tried and spent a lot of money and have a lot of networks, but I ended up winning one of 36 seats to Florida.
Wow.
And so in my district, I was number 2 behind a name that everyone knows in Colorado, and that's Pete Coors. And I made it very clear from the platform that I am against establishment. No mainstream Republican can ever win the election. They haven't. And people heard the truth, and I fought for it. And that's how it started. I went to Florida. I didn't compromise. I did not vote for Mitt Romney in the first round. I took an abstention, which counts as a vote. So, I rocked the area because I wasn't really caring about the political class. I was caring about what I needed to get done.
What you're talking
about, the stamp of the truth.
That's right. And what you're talking about is leadership. And we celebrate leadership on this show. Sadly, we are running out of time, but soon, hopefully, we will be meeting in person. But Anil, I want to thank you for coming on this show. I want to thank you for what you have done in Colorado. And I know that you will be a long-term friend of the Tim Donnelly Show, and we will have you back many times to give us updates. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. The same to you. You have an influence outside the state also, and it's been an encouragement to many people. Keep fighting. Thank you so much, Tim.
God bless you and Godspeed. You've been listening to the Tim Donnelly Show, and I don't do this alone. I want to say thank you to my producer, Bethany Nosko, the Noskinator, Cassie Cassidy, my guest booker, and to you, my listeners, the audience, because this show is about you. Whatever you're doing tomorrow, just make sure at 3 p.m. you are here with us on the Tim Donnelly Show on the Radio Free California Network. God bless and Godspeed.